Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
How you doing?
Oh, fighting with an airbrush at the moment.
Are you? You're fighting with your airbrush. I'm fighting with my internet service here for some reason. It's being inconsistent this morning for whatever. Yeah.
It's the weather. Blame the weather.
I don't know. Yeah, I was trying to get on, and it just kind of, waiting and waiting. Like, come on. So anyway.
Oh, so it was you. You were the problem.
Yes, I was the problem. Okay, I take full responsibility.
Yeah, I thought it was the system.
Yeah. Well, it's evidently my system or whatever. Yeah. Anyway, good morning. How are we all doing?
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good now that we seem to have the internet working here, which is good. Okay. So guess what? Today is Wednesday, and we're going to be talking a little bit about painting. And in fact, I have a video that I want you guys to watch. I think you're familiar with a fellow by the name of Daniel Sprick, right? We've looked at his work before. He does some very, I hate to use the word hyper real, but very representational paintings. Some of them can be a bit, a bit edgy, a little bit disturbing, maybe a little bit dark in some cases. But in this particular case, through Streamline Publishing, he's actually doing a live portrait demonstration, okay? And since so many of you are interested in painting the human face, I think it would be really helpful because this is pretty complete. It kind of walks through the whole process. There's, unfortunately, there's quite a bit of dialogue in there. But there's a good deal of actually watching the paint go down on the canvas, and particularly in the early stages when he's developing the image. And I think it'd be really valuable for you guys to see that. So it'll take about a half hour. It's about a half hour, a little longer than a half hour. But again, I would have a notepad, close at hand. If you have questions, things like that, ask, okay? And we can kind of stop the video and kind of go over anything that's not clear. And I'll try to clarify it for you, okay? All right.
Okay.
So that's kind of the deal here. So let's see. All right. Okay, that sounds Neil. Okay, wait a minute. All right. Where? All right, let's do this one. Yeah, we're not doing Rose Fredson. That's a different thing. Let me open that up. Now, yeah, she's got some nice work too, but that's, how did we get there? I don't know. Yeah, there it is. Okay.
Hello, Dan Sprick here. I'm planning to do a portrait for you with a model posing. I'd like to cover going from generalities to specifics, which is really how I do all of my work. And I like to start with composition and think about how it's going to, how each part of the painting is going to affect the other part. And of course, I'm also interested in getting a likeness of the model. We'll see if I can do it in the amount of time given. I'm lucky to have a very cooperative model who's in good spirits and lights up the room. So I think that's going to make things go a lot better than it might otherwise. I think the most exciting part about this video will be watching an image emerge from the nondescript blur a generality. Well, when first you start interested in light and dark, big shapes, and with any luck, I'll be able to generate a decent likeness of the model and to make it emerge with a combination of light and shadow. I like how her hair it's casting a shadow on a part of her face, and then I have some reflected light coming from the right side, which would be the shadow side. I think this would be a good demonstration for anyone who likes to paint portraits, but also even if you're a still life or landscape painter primarily, the same principles apply in terms of composition. And if you put a lot of work into portraits, it's bound to make you a stronger landscape painter. And I think vice versa too. So whatever your emphasis in art is, or like me, I really don't even have an emphasis because I like everything. I think it could help build a foundation for your painting, no matter what you do.
The following presentation is a gift from the team at Streamline Publishing, publishers of Fine Art Connoisseur, Plein Air Magazine, and weekly newsletters Fine Art Today, Realism Today, Plein Air Today, and American Watercolor, and events, the Plein Air Convention and the Figurative Art Convention. We offer over 400 different art instruction tutorials and ultra high quality video by the world's leading artists.
Okay. Hang on one second. This is not, this is not where we want to be. Okay. Yeah, okay. Here it is. Yeah, Daniel's correct.
The following presentation is a gift from the team at Streamline Publishing, publishers of Fine Art Connoisseur, Plein Air Magazine, and weekly newsletters Fine Art Today, Realism Today, Plein Air Today, and American Watercolor, and events, the Plein Air Convention and the Figurative Art Convention. We offer over 400 different art instruction tutorials and ultra high quality video by the world's leading artists. If you like what you see, help us support our artists and our team with your purchase. Each video aired has a special discount code for today only in the comments section.
Hello, everybody. Painting a portrait today, and luckily have a beautiful model, Lee Lavalier, who's an artist herself. I've selected a bright white background. I'm in this habit of using a cool reflected light. It's just some plastic stretched over a mirror, which acts like a theater gel. And I've got her composed right in front of me with a irresistible composition, and I'm excited. Let's get going. golden hair color is absolutely wonderful. And it's a little bluer on the shadow side, and really bright on the light side. I wouldn't have thought I'd want the hair casting that shadow onto part of your face, but I like it. It's really nice. It's really work with that.
So does your approach to portrait change in regards to still life? Or are you still looking for the same?
It changes more in regard to landscape. And for that, I use a slow drying paint because the weather's so hot. In here, I'm using a little bit faster drying paint because I expect to be working on it 2 days, and I'll want it to be dry to the touch too. And there will just get a lot more flexibility. You can do it. It's about as detailed as it's going to get now.
Okay, I want to stop right here for a second and point out what he was working with initially was vine charcoal. Okay, and he was putting down, his first indications of where things were with that vine charcoal. And the reason for that is that vine charcoal is, very easy to remove. In fact, it's very difficult to get vine charcoal to stick, like on the paper. If you just touch it or rub it just the least little bit, it will just, go away. So what he's doing now is he's coming back in with a graphite pencil and he's reinforcing those lines so that when he starts putting like washes of paint over that, the graphite won't move. It won't go anywhere. The line will still remain there. So he'll have a landmark, that he can go back and find. If he just left it with the vine charcoal and went over it with the turpentine and paint, all of that vine charcoal would have just dissolved and just, gone away. So again, this is making sort of like a more permanent statement, so that, he doesn't have to worry about it disappearing in the process. Okay.
Oh, okay.
I'm just putting these pencil lines on because I will rub that charcoal off, vine charcoal rubs off. It's meant to rub off easily. And then I'll put just some real thin washes over it. And just have a few lines on here to indicate where things are going. And, I thought I knew what you looked like, Lee, but it's every moment's a surprise. And because I see things I didn't expect, and that gets me excited.
That's right.
Yeah. It's like you in your photography, maybe see the same thing 100 times, but suddenly you see it in a different way. That makes it new. Most of the time when we've been working, I've drifted off into outer space and they can't even converse. So it's easier to do that. Shocking yellow, but it won't, it'll just be a trace of this lead. I wish you could see it.
Yeah.
It's kind of my trademark yellow. Of course, I don't do it for trademark. I do it because it's yellow at high saturation or low saturation. It glows like no other color.
But then you layer over it.
Well, the background, what I hope to do is I don't do much more to it, like ever.
Well, I just notice a lot of your portraits have that
Yeah,
kind of what I would consider a void.
a void.
Whether it
It is a void.
yeah, so
Yep.
it's like doesn't create its own narrative. Like it leaves it open.
Mm-hmm. And the story really is in the individual. So super squint. That's what it's all about. It's squint like Mr. Magoo. And that's how
You get to see the
that's how to see. Is to cut out 90% of what you see and just see just visualize the big generalities. And artists have been talking about that for centuries. Well, I'd say since the 19th century anyway. And it holds up. It's just the best approach I've ever known. I have to remind myself to squint.
So are there paints and brushes that you prefer? Or are they different between doing landscape and portrait?
Pretty much the same. But in the studio, I just mix in some stuff to make it dry faster. That liquid that I showed you, this gel, it speeds up the drying. And you can adjust how much you put in to control the drying speed. So since it's really warm, it's going to get hotter. I want to just not use too much. I would use more in the winter when it's cold. Like all paint is really affected. Paint drying time is really affected by air temperature.
Is there someone on your wish list to do a portrait of that you haven't been able to do?
It's the only one that comes to mind. Her name is Rita. Today, I have no other thoughts. You know, I really want you to see this. I'm going to take a photo and show it to you because it's kind of an unexpected way that it looks right now. So that's what it looks like.
Oh, great.
It's
Yeah.
but well, you know, I want to have an essence right from the very start.
Yeah.
And then it propels me and I don't feel so lost. Even though it is so general that you think it's useless. By the way, that was what I was talking about with the cast shadow from your hair.
Yes.
I wouldn't have thought I'd want that, but I really do.
Yeah.
So you never know exactly what you want.
Now I know what my essence looks like. Right?
Yeah, your essence at this moment.
At
It's going to
this
look different if you walk around the room.
Yes.
Yeah, visually.
Yeah.
The spirit won't be different. But
So it's a similar approach to when we were painting the still life.
it is. Yeah, in this regard, I use the same approach for everything.
You should explain your wonderful tool that you
The malt stick?
devised.
Yeah. It's a pretty high-tech tool. Stick. Hold your hand steady. I imagine Ira use something similar to for heart surgery, for performing heart surgery, not receiving.
I said it makes me want to squint back.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. Okay. And that's,
So now I'm going to know all your features. Till the time we're done.
uh-huh. Painting landscapes. I didn't really have much conversation with those landscapes.
It's a very zen
Uh-huh.
thing to do, right? Because you have all that quiet and stillness all to yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. This is raw umber out of the tube. In painting language, it's when you say out of the tube, it denotes something unusual because you really rarely use, unmodified colors as they come from the tube. Shadow is so unexpected and so nice. The shadow cast by your hair on your right side.
Let's stop it here for a second. And I want to point out, you notice he's using really just one brush. And what he's doing is he's laying in color, but the brush is kind of dry and it's not loaded with a lot of paint. And so he's going back over areas and just, with a light touch, and he's beginning to build up the paint. It's like each paint stroke, he gets a little more paint there, and he begins to create a value, right? Like down the side of that nose, across the forehead. in like that transition from the dark of that eye socket, into this cast shadow area. See, and that's a process that we call scumbling. Okay, and that's a word you might want to remember, because all it is working with that brush, and it's creating what we call open or broken paint passages. We kind of watched a video on that on Monday, where you're not just putting down a paint stroke, like real solid color, but what you're doing is you're loading your brush, you've got a little bit of color in it, and you're just lightly working over it, and it's like leaving just a little bit of paint at a time until you begin to adjust or modify that area to the value, or maybe create a paint surface that you're interested or looking for at that point. And that's all he's doing with this. He's not, it's not like he's taking the raw umber and mixing it with anything other than terpenoid to thin it, so he's not adding white to it or anything. And just notice, he's getting a range of value here. Okay. And the reason that he's using the raw umber, by the way, is because it's one of those colors that dry very quickly, so that when he comes back into this tomorrow, it'll be totally dry. Okay. And so what he's doing right now is he's creating really what we would call a grisaille or an underpainting. Okay. So we'll let him keep going. But just see the light strokes that he's making, and it's like every once in a while he'll get a little bit heavier handed and leave a little more paint, but it's the pressure on the brush as to how much paint he's putting down there.
I like to have a sequence anyway. So that's what it looks like right now.
That's fast.
It's starting to,
Appearing.
yeah,
It's revealing itself.
yeah. You can see where it's headed.
Yeah.
Makes it a little more simple than just the flat. It's a pretty good foundation.
What do you decide to change from brush to element?
Not yet. No, just mixing with that.
Just to mix.
Just to mix color. Yeah. Just quite. I've been tossing and turning the last few days, trying to think how to approach this. I am in the habit in recent years of starting with just a monochrome the first day, and then to go over it with opaque color the next day. But I'm skipping that step because we only have 2 days. And I want to get right to the point, and I think I can skip it. The reason I'll do the monochrome is to essentially try to solve the drawing problems. I say try because I don't always succeed at it. There's still corrections to make. No matter how long I work on it, but I'm going to just do them both at the same attempt. So this is a kind of a shadow color for the warm side. We can do a shadow color for the cool side. Now light color for the light side. And that should be enough for now. I really do enjoy this temperature difference between, the warm daylight and then the cool reflected light. A lot of earth color here. Strong, but it's a plain and simple color. But it's a foundation for what I'm seeing. There will be blue and red and those things. And this is the speed up group. And dip a little bit of the palette knife into some paint thinner to thin it out at this stage. Later, it will probably be thicker as it goes on. This just helps it flow a little bit. And you just only need a few drops of paint thinner.
So as you add layers and the composition becomes more solidified, you use heavier paint.
I do, because then I want more texture too. And coverage. Part of this stage, though, makes it part of the advantage that makes the subsequent covering. Sorry, I kind of drift off into space while I'm talking. It kind of goes and more.
So these are all the different levels of shadow and light.
Mhm. These are the light and shadow on your right side, on the light side. And then it's going to be like a blue or light and shadow on the shadow side. So light palette knife and a dark palette knife. So then if you wipe them off every single minute. I'm using this, it's called turquoise blue. It's mixed with earth colors. And that is brighter than it should be. There'll be some, along with that, some burnt sienna. It's kind of red, an earth red.
What is the blue creating? Using the blue, what is that? Is that
It's
for this?
for that, because it filling in the shadow, at least partially. Yeah, so there's this cool picture showing on the skin, which is, it's not a natural color, obviously, for skin, but it when it's integrated, it will look nice. I hope that's that's the intention. And if it doesn't look natural, then you got to adjust it, because then it's, you know, too strong. This is this earth red is, it's really the right way to, you know, because this is clearly, you know, way too nice. That, you know how actors look with gels
Right.
on stage and you know, concert stages. It's a lot of different colors of light. Because you were involved in lighting. Lighting. Was it lighting? So, you know, this is much lower tech. The advantage of using the mirror with the, say, the blue plastic stretched over it is that the mirror is going to have the exact, it's going to change whatever the outside changes, is going to change with it. But if you had an electric light and a natural light together, the electric light's going to stay the same brightness all day, and the outdoor light's going to keep changing. So this works a lot better for me. Well, I haven't even tried. Yeah, I have. I tried combinations of natural and electric light. You can do it, but not today. So this color is intended for the dark parts of the shadow side, and this is the light part of the shadow side. That might be too rich still, they'll find out. And what I'm doing is arranging these colors in relation to each other. So there's, you know, there's still this warm white, which will show up in hair. That will be almost unchanged. This for the lights of the skin, this for the medium areas of the skin, this is for the darkest part on the face of the shadows, the shadow areas. And then coming back to the dark parts of the shadow side and the light parts of the shadow side. So it's really only 5 colors. So it's not too crazy. Raw umber is nice for this because it has a ways to go before black is it's lighter than black for this. It's dark, but it's not as dark as black. It'd be a clear, kind of speaking with you and speaking with the world at the same time. However, it's pretty much the same thing. So. And you're not, confined to these colors. That the premix colors modify them with everything else that's available as needed throughout the course of the work.
Okay, if you look right now, okay, what he's done is he's mixed up some sort of pre-mixed shadow and light, and he shifted the color temperature in the darks and also in the lights. And what he just did is he put down 2 of his darks. This one having generally a cooler, well, this one actually is, to me, is a little bit warmer. But it's a very strong dark. And then as he transitions, you see the change in the 2. If you squint your eye down and look at that, it all still falls into the same kind of value range. But when you actually look at the shift in it, there's a change in color and a change in temperature between these 2 areas. So he's just beginning to lay that in. And he's not using what we would consider traditional skin tones. This is still kind of a monochromatic painting. He's using that raw umber as a base, and then he's adding slight temperature shifts into it right now. And then he'll come back in later and, on the second day and start adding in what we would call, like truer flesh tones. But he'll have this as a foundation. Okay.
You know, Cassie looking so much like your father, this young man in the military.
This marine images. They look
God,
a lot
there-
like me.
There's no need for DNA testing. Here's your father.
Mhm. So what is the most extensive palette that you have?
It's this.
No, like, like, do you remember working on something where you had so many colors?
Oh, this is pretty average, really. The number of colors. Sometimes more. You know, not much more at any given time at the painting. So
So since you're using the outdoor light against the mirror, how do you adjust to it changing throughout the day?
Well, I can vary. Sometimes if something like brilliant comes in that didn't see before, I may change the whole thing. And other times it's better to kind of stick with the original idea, which even if you like the changes, the good thing about Northlight is it doesn't change too much in the day. It changes some. The cloud cover will change the intensity of it, and we'll change the color. But I think I will just stick with this color, light, regardless of what happens out there. Because what matters more is that it's unified, rather than accurately reflecting all the, everything that is happening. I love the definition of the neck, shoulders. I hope you like.
I'm very angular. Which I have other artists I work with say that they don't like that.
Other artists don't.
They don't like that I have sharp edges, I guess. That's like
It's exciting. It's visually very appealing. It's very and it looks like it won't need anything this bright. I didn't realize it. So far, it's way too light. Maybe on your shoulder, a few highlights. It might.
Okay, I'm going to stop it right there for a second and, take a real careful look at how the color is beginning to move across the form here and how this is considerably cooler in temperature and then warmer in temperature on this side. Can everybody see that difference? Okay.
Yeah.
Right now, it just look whiter to me.
Pardon?
The color just look more beigey.
Mhm.
Till I see the temperature.
Yeah,
change.
it looks bluer. Yeah, on the right, on the
Yeah.
left side.
Mhm.
Yeah, you can see that this has got, it's more to, you would call it a blue-gray or whatever.
Right.
And more of kind of a warmer, kind of maybe pinkish, beigeish color,
Yeah.
right? Range.
Yeah.
And so what he's done, and I talked about it a little bit, when he mixed up those pre-mixed colors, the thing he was thinking about is that change in, from light to shadow, but also from the warm influence of the light to the cool influence of the shadow. And so when he mixed his colors, he mixed them accordingly so that they would reflect that shifting. Okay. Now, this is really just an early stage, and this is a 2-day painting. And so, but from the very beginning, you see, he's beginning to establish, his concepts, his underlying ideas about, what he's seeing on her face, and he's addressing both value, and building form, but he's also addressing the shift in color temperature as well as color value, right? And so even at this stage, if you look at this face, the face doesn't look flat, does it?
No.
See, it's beginning to feel like it's rounding out, and getting some form in it, right? And he hasn't put any detail. He hasn't put the nostrils or the mouth. He's painting those basic underlying structures first and getting, his range of value and shift in temperature established before he goes back in and he puts in any kind of detail. Okay?
What I've noticed is the fact that when we send in drawings to you, the shading and the shapes are linear, and that he is drawing with his paintbrush and making it look with the colors like it's rounded,
Right.
instead of being everything so straight.
Right. Yeah. Now in the drawing process, what you're doing is, you're massing in value. See, and it's that 5. Remember, I keep saying that turn form in a drawing and in a painting, you need at least 5 steps in value. And what did he mix on his palette? He's basically got, 6. Well, he's got 6 different values down there. He's got 3 for the light side, 3 for the shadow side, right? And it's those change in values, but also temperature that help reinforce that idea of the volume. Now, in a drawing, since you're drawing with a single, medium that has a particular color, whether it's brownish or gray or black, you have to rely on those 5 steps of value. You don't have a shift in temperature unless you're using like a pastel or a Conte, and you've got 2, like a warmer and a cooler version, in your Conte. But, in this particular case, he's doing it in oil paint, and, he's staying very true to that concept or that idea of, turning that form with that change in value, but also enhancing it with a change in temperature. Okay.
I have a question.
Mhm.
You know that he painting is like using the dark color first, even though like the hair and all those things is white and silvery white, but he actually painted the base with the dark color first. Is this always the way that you should do it, using the different value first and then
Right.
slowly lighten
Yeah.
out?
But notice, okay, even like you were talking about the hair here, see, he's established where the outside edge of her hair is. over here and the inside edge, right? And so he's left this lighter because it's very light. So he didn't darken that in. Now he did darken the area in here. If you squint your eye down, right, and look at the photograph, you'll notice that the hair, even though it appears to be lighter than some of these darks behind it, overall, it's really not all that light. See, it falls into a shadow, right? And even though it's a light, you know, what we would say is that the local color is a light value, because it's in shadow, you know, it still falls into, it's actually darker than a midtone. See, it really is on the shadow side, okay? And he'll come back in and he'll address some of that, you know, as he develops the painting. He'll find those ranges of value, you know, for that hair that's in the shadow and in the light, okay? But right now, mainly what he's doing is he's establishing the form across the features of the face, you know, and down the neck and the chest. Does that
Thank you.
kind of answer your question?
Yeah, it is. It's just that when I start learning acrylic painting, I always do like when it's like brighter color, I never do a dark color on the base first and then do the white color on top.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I just go straight to that color and try to blend it to the nearest
Right.
darkness, which I think maybe, is it wrong? Or is it
No.
a different way of doing it?
No, it's a little different approach with using the acrylics and the way that you're describing it. It seems like you're doing more of what we would call an alla prima approach, right?
Yeah.
At
Yes.
Fast, where what he's doing is he's beginning to build, you know, what we would call a traditional process painting, by building, you know, basically an underpainting, and that's what he did with the raw umber.
I see.
As you see,
Okay.
he established his light and dark shapes and got his proportions, things like that. Now,
Mm-hmm.
you know, if you go far enough back, like say to the Renaissance or even into the academic painters of say, like the 15, 16, 1700s, you know, then what they would do is they would take that underpainting and they would do a full version of it. So it would actually look like a final painting. It would just be monochromatic. And then they would come back in and work their color over that. He started off, you know, basically establishing that underpainting, what we call an underpainting or a grisaille. And then he stopped at a certain point once he had his big shapes established, and then shifted color. And again, the reason he did that was because he's trying to accomplish this in just two settings. You know, he's not doing this as a traditional portrait where he would do the complete underpainting and then have the model come back again and again, you know, to work color over it. You know, he's trying to do this in a fairly quick process. So he didn't really take the underpainting to a complete stage. He had just enough that, you know, he had his composition and values established. And so now he's moving from there, from, you know, in that monochromatic approach, he's begun to add a little bit of color into it and add in the element of not only value, but temperature, see? And again, he's still working on just those underlying forms, okay? You know, he's not trying to develop eyes and noses and, you know, all the features of the face yet. He's getting a good, accurate base that he can build on when he comes back in for the second day, okay?
Yes. Thank you.
you doing? Break-wise? You okay?
Yeah, somewhat.
Yeah, I like to move your arms and legs around because it just helps you, keep your blood moving. Robert Henry's book, The Art Spirit, there's somewhere in there, I could swear I read, who said that just by changing the direction of the strokes when you're working, it's going to affect the amount of glare from the windows. And so that's one of the real reasons to use a blender brush. And that's, that information hasn't really changed in the last 100 years. Light behaves the same. So another one to show you where it's going. I like to keep you involved in the process.
Yeah.
So it's starting to shape up now. It helps me to see it small too. I'll start to see things that I didn't see before. So the phone is kind of surprisingly handy. In edits, I'll turn it, reverse it like a mirror. Since I don't have a real mirror here right now, I might set one up later. So see it backwards and upside down, and it helps me identify problems as they're developing and catch them before they get out of hand. And not only see problems, but to see the larger dynamics of the composition that I didn't see. Now, it seems paradoxical to see the larger view when it's so reduced, but I do. And I'm seeing this, these two diagonals talk to each other. I didn't even see that before. So I'm going to want to play that up. Hello, Dan Sprick here. I'm planning to do a portrait for you with a model posing. I'd like to cover going from generalities to specifics, which is really how I do all of my work. And I like to start with composition and think about how it's going to, how each part of the painting is going to affect the other part. And of course, I'm also interested in getting a likeness of the model. We'll see if I can do it in the amount of time given. I'm lucky to have a very cooperative model who's in good spirits and lights up the room. So I think that's going to make things go a lot better than it might otherwise. I think the most exciting part about this video will be watching an image emerge from the nondescript blur, a generality, where I'm first to start interested in light and dark, big shapes, and with any luck, I'll be able to generate a decent likeness of the model and just make it emerge with the combination of light and shadow. I like how her hair is casting a shadow on a part of her face, and then I have some reflected light coming from the right side, which would be the shadow side. I think this would be a good demonstration for anyone who likes to paint portraits, but also even if you're a still life or landscape painter primarily, the same principles apply in terms of composition. And if you put a lot of work into portraits, it's bound to make you a stronger landscape painter. And I think vice versa too. So whatever your emphasis in art is, or like me, I really don't even have an emphasis, because I like everything. I think it could help build a foundation for your painting. no matter what you do.
They had to sell the sauce there.
Well, you just saw a segment from Portraits with Daniel Sprick. It's a brand new video just released today, and it's very long and very extensive, and it's a terrific course, and you can learn more about the entire course at lilyartvideo.com. And we even have a special discount code for you today. Oh,
Okay. So, okay, yeah. So you didn't get to see him finish, the second part of that portrait, but you got a good idea of how he began to set up the foundation for it, which is really the more important part, of the process. Because unless you have that foundation in there, you're not going to be able to. Let's see, I have enough. Okay, yeah, Jackie. You're not going to be able to develop it into any kind of finished work, right? So I keep emphasizing this in your drawings and your paintings. The first, probably the first 2/3 of the painting really should be in, figuring out and addressing, the composition, the values, the generalized color, getting all those foundations, in place, before you can really, get to the point that, most of you find being fun, which is getting in and, noodling and doing detail, right? And, it's like with, you can actually see it in a lot of the drawing process, when you guys send in drawings, that what you're trying to get to first is you're trying to start getting to the details. You start drawing the eyes before you ever establish, where the head is or what the angle is, or, what the figure is doing, right? Because for some reason, and it's a common thing, most people think that, well, if I can get the eyes looking right, then I can get the rest of it looking right. And that's not the case. It's just the opposite. You've got to address the big things and work to the small things. And so, I'll keep saying that to you, and I mean, some of you are getting it, some of you are getting the idea behind that, and it's showing in your work. But again, you've got to take the time to, I guess, put in a little bit of work up front, and really kind of think through what you're doing, before you jump into, actually, doing the piece. Come up with, a good, clear idea of where you want to end up at. Now, for a while, if you don't have all the technical rendering skills and the color mixing skills, and you don't see value well and things like that, it's going to be a struggle for you for a little while. But the more you do this, the more you begin to understand it, the better you'll get at those things, and your paintings will begin to, improve. Paintings, drawings, whatever kind of work you're doing, including if you're doing three-dimensional work, even sculpture. So I would really encourage you, take your time, and
it's going to be hard for me to just make that, because what I do is I almost draw the thing first, and look like where he just gives a general shape,
right.
But I'm not doing a general shape. I'm doing almost the complete outline of the drawing first, and then filling it in.
Right.
And apparently that's not the right approach.
Yeah.
Well,
You're doing it wrong too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and that's a good question. Okay, Bernice. because, and I guess what I would ask you is the same thing that like Barbara Bradley asked me, you know, when I was at the Academy of Art. It's like, why are you doing a complete drawing? Knowing
It's not a complete drawing. I'm doing the outline of the drawing.
Mhm.
Outline, you know, not the complete drawing necessarily.
Yeah. Well, now, you know, if you notice, the very first thing he did, he worked with fine charcoal. I don't know if you saw this from the very beginning, but he
I
worked.
did.
Yeah. And he just put down some generalized big shapes, right? He didn't get into drawing the eyes and the nose because he knew he was going to paint over all of that, and that was all going to go away. So he wasn't going to spend his energy or his time trying to establish where all of that was at that point, because he knew he'd be doing it later, you know, in the painting process. And I would say the same thing to you. It's like, you know, if once you get a general idea of the proportions and placement, you know, of your objects, it's like, why go further? You know, because you know you're going to paint over it and you're going to lose it all, and you have to find it again. So don't do that. You know, don't waste your time. You know, get those big general shapes, because as you begin to, you know, lay in color and value, you know, your image is going to begin to solidify and begin to emerge anyway. So that's where you actually, you know, can really put in your time, you know, in your effort in rendering, rather than drawing it, covering it all up, you know, and then having to find it again. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. You know, like in the beginning, even though he had done it in charcoal, when he painted over it with the umber, I think the hair was lighter on the left side, and it looked like a pointed head to me. I had no idea what he was shaping.
Yeah.
You know, like, what is he shaping? You know.
Right. Yeah. Well, at first, yeah, he was finding that, you know, that big general outside shape. And then he started, from that big general outside shape, he came in and he started dividing, you know, the hair from where the actual face was, and putting that face inside that, you know, that envelope. And, you know, once he had that established, you know, then he found sort of the generalized proportions, you know, of generally where the brow ridge or the eye would be, eye sockets and things, you know, where the bottom of the nose would be and where the chin was, and then the structure of the neck and the structure of the shoulders. So, you know, he broke it down, you know, very methodically, and made sure that, you know, before he even started establishing it with a pencil and making it permanent, that he had those general proportions correct. You know, the width versus the height, and that everything sort of looked proportional. And then he came back in with a pencil and sort of restated those areas. So again, when he started painting, it wouldn't just disappear, you know. And we talked about that, you know. He did it with the vine charcoal at first because, again, it flakes off very, very easily, you know, and you could just take your hand and just rub it back and it would almost all be gone. But with the graphite will stay there. And even if you go over it with, you know, thinned paint like turpenoid and like some kind of color, you know, the pencil line is still going to be there. It's going to stay in place as a guide for you. Okay. And then you can begin to build lights and darks from there. All right.
Hey, Charles, I think our problem as new artists, we don't have the confidence in ourselves to be able to, I think, that we can do that. That's why we draw the whole thing first.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah, and it does. It becomes sort of a crutch, you know. You're relying on it, you know, so that you feel confident about where you're placing things. And you know, I mean, you know, some people still do that. You know, there are professional artists who do that. Again, you know, at the end of the day, you know, you do whatever you need to do to get the effect you want, but there are more efficient ways of working. And at the end of the day, again, you know, why put in all that extra effort knowing that you're going to have to go back and redo the same thing at a later stage because you've lost it in the process of painting over it. You there, John?
Mhm. John,
He's frozen. He was.
yeah.
Yeah. John? Let's unmute him.
It must have gone.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm here.
he's back. Okay. All right. So does that make sense?
No, it definitely makes sense. Yes.
Mhm. Okay. Now, yeah, again, you know, if it makes you feel better to, you know, find all those different shapes and things, you know, and draw them out meticulously. Okay. You know, again, you know, if that works for you, that's fine. Okay. But there are probably more efficient and in many ways, you know, better ways of doing it so that, you know, it doesn't take you as long, you know. And then
Yeah, I would think that, you know, those of you who use oil painting would do more of the looser not doing it because, you know, you can paint over. But like I work in watercolors,
right,
and you can't really cover over a lot of things. So.
right. And so, okay, I'll throw this one at you. Okay. And specifically because you do work in watercolor, if you take all that time doing a very tight drawing, and then let's just say that, you know, you start into doing the color over that, and the drawing isn't, you know, 100% correct, then what are you going to do? You know, when you get into a point where it's like, okay, I need to make a change, you know, maybe I need to change the perspective or the angle on this or something. And you've already established those lines and now you can't get rid of them.
Right.
That's why sometimes you end up with the picture that you didn't mean to paint. You know, you had something in mind, but because you couldn't move the line, now you have to paint something different.
Right.
I know that's how.
Well, I can tell, like, there are times when I don't draw it ahead of time, like this last one where we talked about making corrections with the landscape thing. That was not drawn out ahead of time, but sometimes when I draw it out ahead of time, I almost feel like I'm doing a paint by number to fill in the colors.
Yeah. And I could see where you would feel that way because I would kind of do the same thing, you know, if I were just sticking to like a very, very tight drawing. You know, in all honesty, you know, even when I was doing a lot of illustration work, you know, having a good strong drawing is always a good foundation. But in all honesty, sometimes the drawing, unless you start off with the plan that the drawing is going to become an integral part of the finished work and it's still going to show, you know, I think it's a lot of extra work that, you know, is kind of unnecessary. And in your case, you know, because you're doing watercolor, what I would encourage you to do is rather than do a drawing in pencil, okay, is you start off with paint. And maybe you start off with like a yellow or a yellow ochre, right? And you know, and you use that brush and you draw out your perspective lines and things like that to establish, say, the position of your buildings or, you know, where your eye level, things like that are. Because the yellow is such a it's such a light and fugitive color anyway, that,
Right,
that, you know, as you paint over it, it's going to disappear.
right.
Could I make a suggestion?
Sure.
I think that the watercolor pencils would work because.
Well, that's the other thing, yeah. I've been doing that too, using the watercolor pencil because
But use the
Yeah,
yellow
yeah.
in that and it will.
it does, yeah, right into this, yeah.
Right.
I've done that too, right. Definitely, thanks.
Yeah, and maybe like a cadmium yellow or a bright yellow, that might not work so well, you know, so you might have to go to like a yellow ochre or something like that, so you can
Right,
still see it, but as you're working over it, again, it just diffuses into the rest of the color, and you know, and doesn't really affect, you know, the end result as much. So yeah,
particularly, I've used the pencil, watercolor pencils, like establishing horizon lines and mountain lines of the grass of the foreground, the middle ground. And then they, you know, when you water it down, it just blends right into what you're painting.
right. Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, it's like you've got, you know, it's very much so the way he's approaching it, where you put down really just what you need, you know, and then you stop there. You don't need all
Right,
this,
yeah, right.
you know. But, you know, get your big basic shapes and, you know, your general concept down on the paper. And then you begin to work with your color and begin to push and pull, you know, space, you know, get things to come forward, move backward, you know, establish
And
big shape.
that's sort of what I did on this one that I just sent in for Critique Monday, but I'm working on the one right now where I just sort of did the same thing, trying to block in the color areas
Mhm.
and then come back, let it dry, and come in with a little more detail.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and you know, because you're working in watercolor, you know, you've always got that option of you can sharpen things by letting the surface dry and then putting down cleaner, sharper edges and lines, and or you can soften things by just going over it with, you know, flooding the area with a little bit of water and let it soften back a bit. Okay.
Yeah.
So you have options to push and pull, you know,
Yes.
backward and forward.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just have to strengthen my total confidence initially in what
Yeah.
I'm putting down.
Well, you know, and I guess all I can say about that is, you know, over time, you know, the more once you find kind of a working process that you're comfortable with and you repeat it, you do it over and over and over again, then it becomes sort of second nature to you, you know, and you start addressing different concerns at that point because you know that part's working for you. So you can spend a little more time in the rendering or a little more time in, you know, getting the light, you know, the value structure worked out, things like that. So, you know, that all comes with time, but, you know, you've got to do a lot of paintings, you know, before all of that comes in.
Yes.
Yeah, you just do. It just takes, you know, you can have all of the theory out there, you know, that, you know, I mean, you can know everything in your head, right? But, you know, when you practically sit down and start actually doing it, you know, on the board or on the paper or canvas, you know, all that theory, for whatever, just gets really fuzzy because you're
Doesn't quite happen.
right. Yeah, yeah, and it just takes a while, you know, before you get the two to work together. Okay.
All right, thanks.
All right. Anybody else? Okay. Well, it's about 11:49. Is everybody ready to go to lunch?
Can be.
Okay, yes.
I guess. Okay. All right. So anyway, we'll be back here at 2. I don't have a lot of work at this point. So, you know, some of you sent in things on Monday. I think a few of you sent in things yesterday, you know, 1 or 2 of you, not many of you. So if you've got something that you want to talk about, if you've got something that you would like to show and maybe get a little bit of feedback on, by all means do that. If not, even though it's a nice rainy day, you know, take a look outside. You know, get your umbrella. You know, go stand out in the rain for a little while, and just kind of take in, you know, all the beauty around you. I'm sitting here looking at all these trees back behind me, and it's amazing because a couple of them are like in full bloom, you know, like white, you know, against these dark greens and very pale greens and oranges and all kinds of colors and things out there. So, you know, even though it's kind of a little overcast and rainy where I am, you know, it's still really quite beautiful out there. So, you know, go check it out. You know, it's spring. Okay.
Yes. See you all later.
All right. So catch you later.
Charles.
All right.
Yeah, bye.
Thank you. Bye.
See you after lunch at 2.
Okay.
Okay.